Welcome to Life
on
Life's
Terms.
Your host, Justin.
And Chelsey.
And today's topics are...
Well, we're going to talk about the controversy of climate change itself.
Jesus crying out
I
loud.
know. And maybe some solutions that would be the most accepting solutions for, let's say, the public
Like
or
laity,
myself included to accept that what could be a solution. And let's touch on the fires because we ran out of time last time. And
Totally shit the bed on that last episode.
Yeah, we totally did.
Yeah.
So we better fix that.
Yeah. And then I think I'm going to chime in with restorative justice for the youth. And then I'm going to talk... Well, then you and I are going to just talk about, like, normies' perceptions of legal system.
Yeah,
And
I'm classified as that normie.
Yeah, and then we'll talk, and then, you know, we'll develop hopefully some suggestions from that I might be able to go and talk to other people about.
Alrighty.
That's that.
All right. Well, it seems we shit the bed on the fires. We should have ended with the fires last time, but don't know what happened there. Let's start with that because...
Okay.
Well... I know my biggest concern was, and I even mentioned this in my interview with Jeff, my biggest concern about it, me being a mom, is the long-term health effects.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean...
Am I just seeing it as a bigger issue now because I'm a mom, do you think?
Probably.
I mean, I don't remember running around in the field when I was a kid and there was smoke everywhere. You know what I mean?
I lived in Northern Ontario, so we get a lot of forest fires up there. And, that happened when I was young.
So that was your normal?
Pretty much.
I can't recall if that was my normal here. I feel like it wasn't. And then I know it probably is just because I'm a mom. I think everything is just going to be way more devastating than it is. Oh, my God.
Living in an apocalyptic
she's
fucking
going to
view.
need a lung transplant. No. I might be a little dramatic there, but I have a feeling I'm not the only one who thinks that's the case, right?
Well, I think now we're in society, we may be a little bit more hypersensitive to a lot of this stuff, all because of this, what's going on with climate change or the lack of knowledge of climate change. Mm-hmm. I think also there's maybe a potential issue with understanding that fires are normal and natural.
Yeah. Well, I actually read this statistic, and it said that I think it was only 3% of wildfires, forest fires, are caused naturally. That seems really low to me. What about all how often?
Well,
just people suck at putting fires out? Are people really that?
Well, I think that's a skewed number. And the reason why I say that is because right now we're in a drought in Alberta. Mm-hmm. So things are dry naturally. Right. And when we don't get natural forest fires for a long time, well, what ends up happening is we got a buildup. And when you get a buildup, the bush will just naturally fire. Now, there's another known fact that we know about northern communities is that those communities, it's an economic boost for them when there's a fire. So sometimes communities will start fires in order to get an economic boost.
No way.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. That's a known fact.
Well, it wasn't a known fact for me.
For people who work in those areas, that's a reality. That happens for sure. And then I know when I was serving, we didn't have a choice. So here in Alberta, basically the police or the sheriffs are allowed to put you to work if the fire is that bad. So we would sometimes get pulled off of a pipeline and made to go cut bush line for fire breaks. So I've been there. I've done it.
Yeah.
And it's a shitty job. It's not a job that you really want. I mean, you see animals getting burnt and the whole bit, right?
That would be hard to see.
It's a shitty job. It's not great.
For sure.
And I've also cut or slashed right-of-way access roads and stuff through burns. I've said this before, and that's probably like some of the most dangerous bush somebody could ever cut through. It's not a good. It's very, very dangerous. A lot of widowmakers in there. Trees just fall apart and crumble. It's all charcoal, right?
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it's very, very dangerous.
Yeah, I bet.
And yeah, so like, and I think I used this as an example before, but over in Jasper National Parks, or any of the national parks for that fact, none of them have had a natural fire in a long time because they do selective logging in order for it not to have a forest fire.
So that one doesn't break out and shit, there goes the national park.
Well, and then there's the economic piece to all of that as well, right? So, you know, it's not natural when it's not burning. In my opinion, I know I'm going to get backlash for this statement, but I mean, let it burn. Protect your houses and let it burn. It needs to burn. I mean, we just got a dumping of rain.
Yeah, huge.
Here in Edmonton.
Yeah, we did.
Right after. Well, how do you think that happened? That happened because of the forest fires. That's why we got all the rain that we got. I mean, it's all together. Like it all fits together. Fires and rain and all that stuff is what happens.
Sorry,
right?
I'm laughing because I was going to say, you don't think that was some sort of weather control?
Oh shit, you're going down that. Well, I mean,
just some of the stuff I've been reading. Okay,
there
just had to say it.
There is a reality though in that they air quotes, right, can make it rain. NASA has, they have patented rain. Mm-hmm. They've also patented snow, and they've also patented wind.
Yeah, so I was actually reading about a specific patent this morning.
So they can I mean, it rains in Saudi Arabia. You think it's supposed to rain in Saudi Arabia? They make it rain to keep the dust down. Like, it doesn't rain in the fucking desert, man. Like,
yeah,
that's not a natural occurrence, right? And yeah, it rains in Saudi Arabia like once a week.
Oh, wow.
And it's created. Like, it's created rain, whole cloud, everything.
You realize there's going to be some angry people who have lost homes being like, well, why the fuck didn't it rain before my house burned down? In previous fires,
well, it's
for example.
But it's not like a huge, massive torrential downpour. It's not what happens.
Okay.
It's like enough to keep the dust down for about a week, like 2 or 3 days.
Right.
And then it gets so bad and they're like, fuck it, we need more rain. That's what happens. There we go. Look at that.
Yeah, now you sound different.
Yeah, so...
I can hear you.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with the board there, but we'll figure that out.
Yeah, sooner or later.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's one of the crazier things too is that we are able to make these changes and with the weather, yet we don't really necessarily use it for its potential good. Like that Howard Bloom thing, he touched upon how amazing would it be to have a war of weather.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
yeah.
And that's exactly what he was talking about. Mm-hmm. That's where we are. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's exactly where we are, is where we use droughts and famining countries as opposed to like taking them over by land and by force.
Mm-hmm. Well, weather can be absolutely devastating.
It's weaponized.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, that's what it's become. And that's the conspiratorial thought, right?
Yeah. Well,
whether it is or not, I mean, I don't know. We can all put on a tinfoil hat at some point and and like, you know, go down the whole InfoWars Alex Jones thing, and unfortunately, it's a real question. Mm-hmm. It's not a preposterous question. There is some fortitude within that controversial conspiracy, right?
Well, what do you think, what do you think about HARP?
That's fucking real.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
I forget what that acronym stands for.
It is High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, that's real. Well,
it's the U.S. Military Defense Project.
Yeah, Howard Bloom sat on that.
Did he?
Yeah. He was part of creating that.
I did not know that.
Fuck yeah. Go listen to his podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, because I've only listened to clips from it.
Yeah.
From the one with Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you're talking about the weather control right now, and that's pretty much what HARP is all about, right?
Pretty much. And it also like, yeah, so it's about weather control and creating weather control and then using those
to disrupt global communication systems.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Right.
So that's the general of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's and then the other question is how much of this is disinformation?
That's always a question.
Right? I mean, I think that's the other thing that you and Jeff are kind of getting into is there's so much information out there. What do you know is real and what do you know is not real?
Yeah.
You know, the internet is a great thing. There's so much information. However, the con to it is there's just too much. And what's real and what's not real. See, I think back in the day when we talked about encyclopedias, as I did in many of my blogs, the thing that we have to recreate or remember with an encyclopedia is all of the information in there was backed up. You could prove it 3 ways independently outside of the book of encyclopedia. That's why people bought encyclopedias. Mm-hmm. Now, with the internet, it's a whole new research skill in order to figure out what is actual fact and what is not actual fact. And so when you go down this rabbit hole of conspiracy in regards to climate change, this is why it becomes so controversial.
Because there's so many sources. Well, and not only that, but then there's the
bias.
And the blame game.
The blame game, and then the other piece is the dogma that Howard Bloom talked about. So we haven't really had, I don't think we've really had an issue with a guest coming in regards to this.
No.
But in regards to what Howard Bloom had said with the dogma and how dare you say something outside of the dogma of science.
Right.
And I think the unpacking of that creates something that the Catholic Church created, which was this dogma of religion. And that's exactly what science has become. It's become a religion, and how fucking dare you speak out against it. Mm-hmm. Because if you do, you are going to be exacerbated and inundated with people who are going to give you a tongue lashing that you would fucking hate.
Yeah.
And I mean, it takes big shoulders and a thick skin on the neck in order to be able to brunt that. And be okay with, yeah, maybe I am a little bit ignorant in my thought.
Yeah.
But at least I was able to formulate it and put it out there.
Exactly.
You know, we talk about an anti-bullying culture. Well, what the hell is that?
Right? Yeah.
You know, we push people into the corner because their thought is not within cue. Mm-hmm. And that's a bunch of horse shit. Like how the fuck does anybody ever learn to form an opinion when they're constantly told, no, your thinking is incorrect?
Exactly.
I mean, this is why you and I are not journalists. We're podcasters.
Right.
Big difference, right? I'm not here to disseminate or to engage in what is already out there. I'm here to formulate an opinion through a conversation with you.
Exactly. And I have a love-hate with this month, I guess, but I'm loving and hating going through all the research and gathering information so that I can form my opinion, right? And whether or not climate change is controversial, I still want to discuss it.
Yeah.
So that I can come up with my own determination, right? And like I had mentioned before, not a narrow-minded one. Mm-hmm. And isn't that what freedom of expression is all about anyways?
Well, if we didn't have freedom of expression, how are you able to engage in a conversation, to express your feelings about it and express your thoughts about it that is formulated from your feelings in order to learn more? Yeah. When you're only told that you're only allowed to go down this because these people are right. Yeah. Well, then how do you ever learn what's wrong? You know, Albert Einstein said he learned more by the failed experiments than he did from the ones that produced anything. And the reason for it is you need 10 failures to make one success. Mm-hmm. That's 100% real. You know how many episodes I failed on in the show? many before we got any that were about like real value and good.
Right.
You know, it takes a long time to like formulate what is better. You know, and so we have to allow people to fail, and I think, or to learn from their mistakes, as opposed to using the word fail, right?
Yeah.
However, it is a failure.
I was going to say,
if
depends
it doesn't,
how you view failure.
And
right?
we have to get away from this broad-stroked ideology of what the view is of vernacular. I mean, sure, we have a description and a definition of what that word is. However, in the same breath, you have to stay within scope. You can't just make up your own definitions of words. It doesn't make sense, right? Like if I started making up my own definition of a word and started using that word with you, and you're going to sit back and be like, well, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, pardon?
Right? And then I have to now break down my understanding of the definition of that word. That's fine. But we need to afford everybody the opportunity in order to express their definition of the word, because they just may be blatantly incorrect.
Right.
And that's why they haven't been able to form an opinion worth depth and weight, because they have the wrong understanding of the vernacular that they're using.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have we used a word just as an expression, and the next thing you know, you find out that you're completely incorrect on how to use that word?
Whoops. Yeah.
I mean, that was probably the whole fortitude of like your 10 years of age. Right? Getting through the ideology of how to use words and vernacular and vocabulary.
Yeah.
Within especially when you're reading new books that you've never heard before. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And then you're like, let's see if I can like use this word. And then the reality is you go to use it and you're like, oh shit, that wasn't right.
I just made no sense.
And your teacher's like, hey, idiot. Listen here, fucko. Right? You're like, oh, yeah. Yeah, I didn't have nice t-shirts, but whatever.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure my teachers never called anybody fucko.
Well.
But hey, you did go to a different school.
Yeah. Hard knocks, baby. Hard knocks.
Well, I also think that one of the reasonings behind maybe people listening to other people's opinions on climate change, I guess, would be that if they believe, say, the people who are blaming human activity for climate change, if somebody sits back and believes that, then that means they are expected to make these huge, drastic life changes. And who wants to feel like they are the reason behind all this, quote, climate change, and who wants to drastically change their lives?
Well, I think before we segue into a palatable solution, I think what needs to also get broken down prior to that is this whole thing about talking and conversation. Because when we have one side of the room suppressing what other people's thoughts are, whether they're incorrect or correct, and the other side is only dictating what is supposed to be said, what ends up happening, or what we get out of that, is true fascism. That is what fascism is. So like these Antifa motherfuckers that are running around, right?
Yeah.
They are the epitome of fascism. I mean, you know, and then the left makes fun of conservatives saying, I don't agree with what you're saying, but I'll sure as hell die for you to be able to say it. Okay? That's the epitome of freedom of expression. Okay? That is the epitome of it. This is what allows us to engage in an intelligent society, because there is not heresy. Okay? Heresy was used by the Catholic Church to say you cannot say anything outside of what the Catholic Church said. Okay? So like when the Anglican Church was created, the Pope for the Catholic Church said that was heresy, and they were involved in heretics, and that meant that they were talking outside of school. Okay, that's where that word comes from. Okay, that's the ideology behind that word. That's exactly what scientists are giving us in the climate change debate, because they're saying it's no longer a debate. It's not a debate. And if you're talking in terms of a debate, then you are engaging in heresy. We need to get past this in order to develop and deploy their solution. Okay? And this is very, very dangerous. If we allow this to slip once, what's the next norm? Right? If we allow heresy to dictate to us that we're not allowed to expand opinion and diversity within thought, then all we're going to get is the same thing again and again and again. We're never going to be able to have invested, intelligent conversation and thought in even the most infantile way in order to develop it. You see, that's the problem. That's the real problem with that. And the contextualization that becomes of that becomes a society that is where we are right now, where people are afraid to talk.
Yeah.
It's
unfortunate.
I mean, when you and I would sit down in a conversation with our peers when we were in our teens, the reality of being dictated to that we were incorrect or whatever wasn't as harsh as it is today.
Not at all.
Now it's on this global platform called Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is. So people are even more afraid to say or talk. And then you have these overabundantly motherfuckers out there where they pick out one thing that was said incorrectly and they just attack.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Like that's their day job.
Well, and that's small dick syndrome.
Yeah, right.
100%. That's somebody who feels inferior on the inside and they try to be, a gorilla on the outside.
Well, yeah, and what are you gaining from attacking that one thought that may have been
and
a little off?
If we follow what Einstein said about we learn more from failures than we do from our outcomes, like from our positive outcomes, right? People who are failing are the ones who are more likely to gain than those who haven't. So who really has more education than the people who have just gotten it right all the time?
Yeah.
The person who's got it right all the time has been able to, for the most part, deploy what has been disseminated to them in the school. So like that's the measurement of working, is like the people who've already put up the parameters. Okay, the people who fail are the people who failed in the parameters that were suggested by those who are air quotes successful.
Right.
Okay. However, the person who's failed can tell you time and time again why it failed and what not to do for a better, more successful business model. The majority of the people who are abundantly wealthy in this world have never graduated university. Never.
Yeah, I believe it.
Most entrepreneurs have never graduated college or university, right? So
they have a lot of trial and error under their belts. That's for sure.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Right. So like that's a big piece, man. Like that we can't just overlook that. And I think these scientists who are coming out and suppressing people's ideas about this stuff, well, the reality is because it hasn't really been taught, and because it hasn't been taught in a mass scale, or an indoctrination, air quotes, on a mass scale. And there's so many questions about the depth and weight, if it's real or not, that what you find is you find infancy within the conversation. And to get upset with that is just unbecoming.
Yeah.
We have to accept that it's still in its infancy.
Yeah, I was not aware that it was this huge of a deal, this huge of a controversy when I touched on climate change. Like I was not aware of the rabbit hole I was jumping down. That's for sure. I knew it had some weight to it.
Were you surprised that people were unwilling to even talk about it on Twitter?
Yes, I was. Yeah. Because some people just don't care and they'll say their opinion about anything, whether right or wrong. But then this was, it was not quite the people were not quite as willing to go there. But then on the other hand, I do know of some people who were kind of shocked, like I was. Like, they're like, I don't understand. Like, why do people not want to talk about it? I was like, well, just listen to the podcast.
Well, yeah. Yeah, it's pretty real,
Yeah.
right? It's pretty real. It's that suppression from the mob mentality that really needs to go away. We need to be able to express our feelings with impunity. That's what we really need to adhere to, as opposed to saying, that we could dive into this just for a quick second about Facebook. So Facebook and YouTube say constantly they're like the TELUS or the AT&T of the internet. So like when you're talking on your phone, okay, whoever your provider is, favorite provider in the world is Kudo. Go Kudo. We'll accept your sponsorship at any given time.
Yeah. Bring it on.
They're not going to cut you off in your conversation because you may have said something really nasty on the phone. They can't. They're a service provider. Okay? You've paid for that service. Therefore, they give you the platform called the Kudo Network, and they don't cut you off. Okay? That's how a phone works. And they can't listen to your phone calls. That's illegal. Okay? The only people who can listen to your phone calls is the police if they get a fucking warrant.
Right.
Okay? And even the police cannot censor your phone call. Germany used to do that. They would censor your phone call. So did Russia. And China still damn well does it today.
Wow.
When we look at YouTube and Facebook, what have they become? They have started censoring what people can say on their platforms. They're no longer a service provider the second they engage in that activity. They have now become a government. See that? Now it puts it into perspective, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So now when we're talking about these scientists who are disseminating this information, and their side is the one side of the room, and the other side of the room is probably the majority, and they're laity, and they don't really understand what's going on, and they're speaking in this infantile way about climate change from the dissemination of information and education that they've had through their entire lives, and then all of a sudden these people who, air quotes, have more intelligence about the issue are suppressing people's infantile conversations about it. This does not allow for people to develop a real, true, informed idea, opinion, and feeling about something that is inflicting them so drastically. Yeah. And this is why you get huge extremes.
Yeah.
And then this is why you also see a mob mentality, one against the other, in a fight against each other, because now they're fighting about opinions and ideas as opposed to anything that is fruit of labor. It's not going to give us a solution. Like it's just not, right? And so my idea, and this, I'll just formulate this, is I don't think it's society's responsibility to fight climate change. I'm just done with that. You are not going to get the mass of people, and this is why I question it. Looking at the blackboard saying to anybody, is this really a mass indoctrination utilizing the skills and tools of internet in order to see if people will indoctrinate themselves, because we have been subliminally changed since about 1980 to current with television and all of these television and internet and all of these technologies to see if we would just actually accept a willing indoctrination of climate change. And the mass of society around the world just accepts it. Because truth be told, China has been given a free pass until 2030. China and India have been given a free pass with their emissions till 2030. Canada means fucking nothing on this. We could go dark tomorrow and it's not going to make a fucking impact.
Yeah, I know. That's why even so-called solutions such as get rid of all that cattle.
Yeah.
And become vegan. Like that to me is just crazy. It just doesn't make sense. The earth, like all these greenhouse gases that people talk about, that it consists of CO2.
Chelsey made air quotes, by the way, when she said greenhouse gases.
I forgot you guys can't see me. Yeah, air quotes. Like CO2 and methane and nitrous oxide. The earth creates all those too. 100%. Right? Like what about volcanoes erupting?
That was my whole piece when I said, is our carbon any worse than the carbon that comes out of volcanoes?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I don't know. It's never been measured before, right? So, I mean, I just, the question is there. And the innovation that needs to happen is, okay, so you're not going to change the way that people live. That's not going to happen. Instead, what you're going to have is you're going to have to innovate air cleaners and filters and ocean cleaners and filters and so on and so forth in order to basically pick up after us.
Yeah.
Now, the other part to this is we were talking about recycling plastic. Isn't it mind-blowing to learn that it costs us more to recycle plastic than it does to make it?
Yeah, I couldn't believe that.
So we recycle it, and it costs us 10 times more to recycle plastic than it does for us to make it. If there's so much plastic in the world, why are we not just recycling plastic instead of creating more?
Yeah, no doubt.
Fair question, right?
Yeah.
If we have so much recycled paper, why are we still cutting down trees then? Right? Recycling means to reuse.
Yeah.
Right? Well, if we're reusing, why are we still creating an industry that's taking away? Makes no sense to me. And is it Canada that's putting plastic in the rivers, lakes, so on and so forth? Or is it a fucking Asian country that's doing it? I mean, we have to really, there needs to be some accountability here.
Absolutely.
And it's not pressed upon us to defecate on ourselves. That's getting us nowhere for Canadians or even North Americans alike to say, yeah, I'm just going to take my own shit and fucking throw it on myself. That makes no sense. You know, the reality is where we stand here in Canada, we mean very, very little when in regards to a carbon footprint.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very, very little.
Yeah. Very much so. Well, when I was watching that Joe Rogan, Howard Bloom podcast, Howard Bloom, he speaks about how he thinks the answer is using, like, for humans to use technology, because humans use technology for everything. And that if we really want to make a difference, then we need to use technology that gets CO2 out of the atmosphere. And I have seen that pop up in a few different articles as I was browsing. And oh, surprise, surprise, a TED Talks about it.
yeah. There's a TED Talk about pretty much everything.
Absolutely
nowadays.
everything, yeah. And there was one lady, Jennifer Wilcox, the way she preference, like how challenging that actually is if there's, say, a room full of 1,800 people and you have one person wearing a green shirt, then that is the way to compare, like, CO2 and oxygen, and, like, how hard it is to pinpoint that CO2 and individually isolate it and grab it out of the atmosphere. And when I was hearing this, I was just blown away, because then she was talking about how the earth also naturally pulls CO2 out of the air.
Yeah.
Like through salt water and
fucking trees,
plants and soils and even rocks to it, right? Yeah, like that's what the leaves are doing, guys.
Yeah.
But so then what I was just kind of gathering from this, so what humans are just, then my question is, do humans just need to use technology and put all this time and effort in how to speed up the natural process?
Well, the one thing
the natural process is not enough. Is that what we're saying here? I
think the one thing that's becoming abundantly clear is you're never going to get society on the same page. Okay, that's abundantly clear at this moment. Like that's, it's not going to happen. You cannot hurdle us like cattle, unfortunately. Okay, and I mean that, like, in a good way, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Now the one thing that we know can be changed is industry. Industry can be changed, and industry can measure up to the needs and the necessities of what humans want. And like Howard Bloom said, if you can't beat them, join them.
Yeah.
And well, I don't believe that the scientists are going to be able to beat us. So you're going to have to join us as the consortment of unfucking knowing motherfuckers. That's what we are. We're just a bunch of like, and what it seems to be, in their opinion, a bunch of unknowing, infantile fucking idiots. That's what it seems like, okay?
Yeah.
So if that's the case, stop trying to educate us and go and take care of it. If you guys are the social elite, if you're the social elite and you're the smaller of the group with all this innovative technology, stop trying to herd people like cattle and go and take care of it in order to fix it. And if the fix is going to be some sort of air filter and there's already some motherfucker out in the ocean right now picking up all the plastic out of there. And he was on Joe Rogan's podcast as well.
Yeah.
Right. So
I'm pretty sure they do have some technology is already made that can take CO2 out of the atmosphere. But yeah, I totally agree with you. Stop trying to just talk to people about it and try and make everybody believe you. Try to stop being right. Air quotes. You're the right one. Well, and I think
this is the other thing too that Howard Bloom was impressing upon us through that podcast was they want to put a thermostat on the earth, and the only way that they're going to do that is to beat us as society into a place where we just finally accept saying, "Do whatever the fuck you want to do."
Yeah,
and that's where we're going. I mean, I'm already saying that right now.
Yeah.
Go do whatever the fuck it is you got to go do in order to fix this if it's such a huge problem, because what you're not going to win is you're not going to win society to come to a place to say, fuck it, I guess I'm going to start like, I don't know, going to my assembly room to assemble my fucking garbage. Not going to happen. It's called the kitchen.
Yeah.
It's not called the assembly room, you fucking idiot, right? Like that's not going to happen. People are done with that. They've tried it. And all we see is the fucking taxes increase because of this bullshit, right? People are not going to continue this line of getting taxed because it's become unaffordable for us to accommodate. What is more affordable is for us to find some sort of technology that will just clean the fucking air.
Yeah.
Until electric cars become the mainstream.
Yeah.
Which is going to take 25 to 30 years.
Yeah.
So
I feel like it'll take longer than that. But
stop putting the money into propaganda and propagating what it is that we need to know about climate change and fucking give us technology that allows us like toilet paper to wipe our ass and throw it away and not think about it again.
Yeah.
That's what society is looking for. They're not looking for, I need to like take the fucking bus more. Like in Canada, this whole Greenpeace shit doesn't work. We are not a European country. We do not have transit to look at here in Western Canada, we just lost Greyhound.
Yeah.
How the fuck do you think people are getting to small outlining communities in Edmonton?
Yeah.
Or in Calgary?
Yeah.
They're not.
And I'm pretty sure even ETS cut down bus routes.
That's
too,
right.
Our city transit.
So I'm going to tell you something. You know why it's a necessity to have public transit in Canada? People die from a thing called fucking exposure. You know what exposure is? You were exposed to the elements of the environment for too fucking long.
Yeah.
So do not tell me that our environment is not hostile towards us. People wouldn't die if it didn't. These are not people who were on fucking Everest. These are people who walked down Range Road 538.
Yeah, yeah.
That's who fucking died. Right? There's a reason why we have public transit. There's a reason why the federal government in Canada has public transit as a cocksucking loss every year. That's why.
Yeah.
So that people don't die. Because people will die when it's minus fucking 40 Celsius.
Yeah.
That's what happens. Right? So like it's just a cash grab. It's services that we don't need.
Well, and I mean, if our opinions are so infantile to them, then why do they feel the need to talk to us so much about it, like you said, instead of doing something?
That's right.
Like, I don't see the point. If you don't want to hear what we have to say back anyways, then fuck, just go do something.
That's right. And if you don't want to allow us to engage in our infantile conversations in order to formulate opinions and to go and research the information, and instead you just say, here's the information, accept it, move on. Okay, well, I have the same statement. Fuck you and your information. figure out what the fuck to do to fix it and move on.
Yeah. I'm not a scientist. I can't do it.
Exactly. If you want me to put my hands up, that's what I'm going to do.
I can say what I think about it.
That's right. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not going to speak to it. I don't have a lifetime of fucking environmental fucking jack off whatever.
Right?
Like I don't have that. What I have instead is the bullshit that you gave me, and then the other bullshit that people give me, saying that you're a fucking bullshitter.
Yeah.
That's what I have.
I'm just the middleman.
So if that's the case, you're not going to win on the consortment of the majority to say you all have to change. Because you're also telling people that what they have to change is you cannot mine oil anymore. Well, here in Canada, that's 43% of our fucking economy.
Sorry, that's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen here. You know, it's not going to happen. You see America stopping? Hell no. You see Russia stopping? Fuck no. Why is Canada stopping? Because the lobbying pressure is enough. You know, oil was accommodated 43% of our economy, and now it's shrunk to 12% of our economy. You have any idea how many hundreds of thousands of jobs that has left? Many. Like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of jobs. We used to fly people from all over the country to come to Alberta. And I'm sure there's some Greenpeace motherfucker out there like, hey, we're winning. Well, you know what you won? You won a mother now prostituting herself.
Yeah.
Instead of working in Fort McMurray. That's what you won.
Right?
You know, these are economic issues now.
Yeah.
These are not environmental issues. And that's the impact of all of it. You know, and then when you have the Minister of Environment saying, if you have a talking point, all you need to do is yell it louder in the House of Commons and people will believe it. Because the bitch knows that it was fucking lies that she's been speaking the entire way through. The carbon tax is a cash grab. It's it's a consumption tax. It's not a tax to pay for innovation to fucking clean our air. And like I said, Canada could go dark tomorrow and it's not even going to make 1/8 of a difference in the carbon footprint of the world.
No.
It just, it's not going there, right? So like I agree with you. I think the solution that maybe we need to engage in, even in our own research here on the show, is what is the innovation of market in order to accommodate global climate change and climate change. I think that is far more of a superior ideology than trying to make the mass to agree.
Yeah.
Right?
Big time.
Restorative justice for youth.
Let's talk about it. And next.
Restorative justice for youth. We have seen a huge decline of this. We are no longer seeing so much diversion court for youth. Instead, what we're seeing is youth being given severe punishment and severe time for their crimes. We are no longer, it seems to me from my research, we're no longer engaging upon changing behaviors from youth, and we are fostering gang behavior through foster homes. And you know what I mean? We no longer have adoption process in Canada. No, that's been stripped away. So it's very hard to adopt a Canadian kid. Most children that are adopted in Canada come from foreign countries.
Okay.
They're not Canadian. It's very difficult to get an adoption in Canada at this present time where the parents aren't involved.
Right.
So like if we were to go down the rabbit hole of adopting, you and I, you'd want to adopt a child where you have full parental discretion.
Yes.
That doesn't happen anymore. So
if it's in Canada or anywhere?
Well, here in Canada.
Okay.
So if you were to go through adoption and you were to adopt a child, the biological parent needs to be involved with that child for its entire life. Yeah.
Why? I mean, in some cases that may be
that may be
fantastic,
great. But in other cases, so like if you're like a person who wants to adopt a kid, well, what are you really getting in bed with?
Yeah.
You have somebody maybe that. Like, it's just a shitty situation all around, and
for many reasons. Like, would that not be confusing for the child?
Well, and I don't think that the approach has ever been looked at why restorative justice is failing with the youth. Like, the youth have a 99% recidivism rate. That's even worse than the adults. The adults
Yeah.
are 94 to 98%. Right? So if we could say that restorative justice could be a positive consequence towards stopping recidivism, as much as it wasn't ever used as a vehicle to do so, it may be likely that it could, right? So I don't think it's ever been suggested that adoption or group homes may be a serious issue when it comes to recidivism in the youth justice court. Right? I mean, fundamentals of family is such that shitty things create shitty things. Right? So like, you know, there's people, I mean, I've been to jail. There's people in jail who have kids whose kids will probably take their place in jail.
Yeah, that's true.
And this is one of the reasons why Liam and I were talking about the state of colonialization through prison. Okay, if you were to look at a person as a soul, like a free soul, they're like a country, so to say. The court system and the government is impressing upon them that they're going to conquer them through their behaviors. That's fine. However, you're never really going to get anybody to change their behaviors unless they come to an idea that their behaviors are unsavory to begin with. Right? You've never changed anything in your life unless you said, yeah, it's probably not working out so well for me.
Exactly.
And this is the problem with recidivism, is that that person and that offender is not able to see. They see the consequences of their actions, and that's fine. However, they can't see the consequences of their behaviors, which is a whole nother story. And so in the youth justice system, we've totally missed that. We've totally missed that. I mean, I know right now of 3 youth who are on bail the day after they committed a murder.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Not saying that murder, not saying that they know what they've really done. Okay. There's things like FASD, there's a whole bunch of issues. Okay.
Yeah.
Now there's countries though. If you look at America, they're willing to sentence a youth 13 years old, fucking 4 life sentences, which is a full life.
Yeah.
Now, is that also something that we should be looking at here in Canada? I mean, I can't agree with that.
I don't agree with it either.
I have a difficult time believing that a youth really understands the consequences of murder, especially if there's things like FASD involved or developmental issues. There must be an issue if a child is
engaging in such behavior, doing things like that without realizing how
that's right.
How
so
not acceptable it is.
Let me throw this at you. This will lay into the lay opinion of the system. Remember that guy a long time ago here in Canada who cut that guy's head off on the bus?
On the bus, yeah. Yes, I do.
You know, he's free.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing that recently on the news.
Yeah.
Well, when I say recently, within the last few months.
So what do you think the likelihood is of him reoffending? So he came out of a mental health facility, not a prison.
Yeah.
Right? So what do you think the likelihood is of him offending?
Well, was he released because they believe that he's had the he passed some sort of assessment or
Of course, yeah. And he's also so he has to take his, he's on a tight leash, right? Like this guy's got to get his schizophrenia shot every month.
Okay.
So it's not up to him to take his
shot
meds.
For that?
Yeah. So it's not up to him to take his meds. They're actually going to inject his meds into him.
They will administer it. Okay.
And that would, let's say he said no, that would mean he'd go back to jail.
Mm-hmm.
Then also the behavioral assessments that they've done and the models that they've done have precursors saying that he would be better off in the public than he would be in the institution.
I don't know how I feel about that.
I think that that's a much better system than saying 9/8 is up. It's time for you to go to early release.
Well, yeah, because he actually has been monitored and assessed.
And he's still monitored.
Yeah.
Still being monitored.
And it's different than just being like, oh, go see your parole officer, right?
Yeah,
That is way different.
Yeah. I think, and I think that's the other piece too, is that he's actually being engaged all of the time.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, yeah, I think that is a better system than what we currently have in regards to the way how Corrections Canada is dealing with the release of people. Now, also, there's a new idea too of therapeutic justice and what therapeutic justice looks like for people who are in jail. So I just read an article a little while ago where people are going to start getting treatment for sentencing.
Okay.
Here in Canada, so treatment for their drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
And that's fine. However, you do not want to make it an easier, softer route. Okay?
I agree.
Because if it's an easier, softer way, people all day long are going to shit the bed in treatment.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And we see that in drug court currently here in Canada. So the model for drug court is one shot only. Yet, when you go to drug court, they'll tell you it typically takes somebody 7 times in Canada to go to treatment in order to get sober. Yet they're going to give you one shot. So they're telling you off the bat, like right off the bat,
your chances are low.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You're probably not going to make it. Look to the left, look to the right. They're going to be gone by the end of the week.
I'm pretty sure when I was in treatment, they even told us to look around. Like one of the alumni who came and spoke with us, and she was like, just look around. And she's like, the majority of you will probably be back here or will relapse within your first 90 days.
Yep.
It's a cold, hard fact.
And even if you get past the 90 days, the likelihood of relapse is still high.
Oh, yeah.
If you're not going to meetings and you're not doing something that engages your recovery in a daily way, you're fucked. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you right now, you're fucked. I've seen chances less than average, right? Mm-hmm. I think that falls back to the conversation that your mother and I had where family becomes, and I think this also falls into the crime piece too, where your family becomes more trusting of who you are by watching you make your own decisions. Mm-hmm. They become less likely to think that the other shoe is going to drop because you're engaged in positive things and not in a way where you're fishing for a compliment.
Yes, I can give you a personal experience with that just recently because I hit my 2-year mark. So my dad, he's he keeps his opinions to himself for the most part, and he seen me relapse. So in other words, my words meant nothing to him, right?
Yeah.
Even my whole first year of recovery, he did maybe once he told me he was proud. He said I was doing good, but he was never he didn't exaggerate very much. Like he was just like, yep, you're doing good, kid. And then my 2 years last week, he showed up at my house, surprised me with roses and said, you are doing so many good things right now. Your life has changed so much. Just keep doing what you're doing and more. Yeah. Because he's actually seen that I'm taking part in things that are, well, like years ago would have been out of the norm. Mm-hmm. He's actually, now it's been 2 years where I continue to prove that I'm doing things that I guess you could say are on the right path instead of the wrong path. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, like just what you're saying, like he had to witness it. Yeah. Over an extended period of time, not just take my word for it. And I didn't ask him to praise me, and it all happened.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the engagement, right? Where you don't kick the wounded, but your credibility's for shit.
Yeah.
Right? And you have to accept that. It's your responsibility to regain that credibility. Yeah. And if you can't, well, sucks to be you.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I feel like it took me 2 years to gain it back with my dad. That's fine. That's sure. That's fine. Yeah. Even then, I don't think it's 100%. Will it ever really be?
Well, and I think that's the same thing with the criminal system, right?
For sure.
So yeah. I wrote that in my blog saying, it's one thing to get charged. That was the end of my blog last week where I said, when was the last time you committed a crime? Because everybody commits a crime, whether it be speeding, whatever. And I said, how lucky are you that the crime that you committed is not deemed indictable by the federal government to where you have to serve X amount of time, and then for the rest of your fucking life, you have to carry that scarlet letter on you. Because we no longer have a pardon system here in Canada. Instead, what we have is what's called a temporary forgiveness system.
Right.
It's not the same. So where's restorative justice in that? Where is justice restored? So what's the likelihood of somebody reoffending when you already have the fucking letter on you?
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you what, I made way more money in active addiction than I ever have in active recovery. right? The only reason why I stay in active recovery is because I know it's better than being in active addiction.
Yeah.
Right? So like, it's a hard sell when you have, when you're basically telling somebody, fuck you, or selling you down the river, you know? And I think,
kidding.
you know, you as a laity, when you hear all of this broken down, did you ever think that the criminal system was like this?
No, I didn't. I mean, I never thought that it was working probably as well as it should be. I mean, you see people reoffending all of the time. You hear about it. I do know people myself that have been in and out of the system.
Yeah.
I even know a couple of people who were in foster care and in juvie, and that turned into, in their adult life, still being involved in crime or struggling with addiction.
Yeah. I mean,
so obviously something's not working.
So is it, I guess the next question is, are we asking the criminal system to stop punishing incorrect behavior?
No, I don't think you should stop punishing it, but I do believe that you should have more, I almost said the word restorative because you keep saying it, but more, well, you said therapeutic, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
See, but then that's the trade-off. If you're giving therapy,
Can't do both.
How do you give punishment? Because this is the thing that I have an issue with is what does punishment really give us? Okay, when we look at countries who have less of a degree of punishment than we do, they're far superior in a positive consequence of recidivism than we are. Yet we've been in heightening punishment. And what do we create? We create a harder criminal.
Yeah.
A criminal that's more versatile towards maybe violent means.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right?
That makes complete sense.
So if that's, because really, as the offender, we look at the system as, well, the Crown or the person who's the prosecutor is representing our supposed victims. And I say supposed because it's not actually your victim. It's the Crown.
Yeah.
And they're also going to put you in jail. So who do you want to victimize again? It's whoever the Crown is. So that becomes the association. And this is why restorative justice is not about that. Restorative justice is meant to take out the Crown.
Okay.
It wants you to work with your offender in a one-on-one way.
Yeah.
Right? Not the Crown being involved at all. And this is why we really need to look at a model without that. Okay? Because if we look at the outrage we just talked about in this podcast, it's way fucking harsher than anything the court system would give you. This is why people won't even talk about climate change. Right? So if that's the case, why are we not subjecting people, not to a lynch mob, but to an informed group of people in order to create some sort of behavioral adjustment for restorative justice to actually work? You know, it's a tough nut to crack. And when we start outlawing addictive behaviors or insanity,
yeah,
this is a real bad place. I mean, you and I have both said in active addiction, we are not in control.
No.
We are not in control. And to make somebody answer to the actions of their addiction in the context of their behaviors can only be done when that person acknowledges how detrimental their behavior is. Otherwise, it means absolutely nothing. And it's just going to continue and continue and continue. And then, you know, you could say, well, fuck them. Lock them up, warehouse them, and keep the public safe by keeping that person in jail. That's fine. But all you're going to create is that guy coming out with more of a resentment towards the Crown.
Exactly.
That's
more
all.
anger, more resentment, more hostility.
That's right. And then what ends up happening
Not
is
coming out with anything good.
that's right. There's no tools there.
Absolutely not.
You know, we've set them up for failure. You know, so like this is the piece where I said in that blog, we need to make jail, and I said it with Liam, we need to make jail a place to go to because of therapeutic sentencing.
Yeah.
And the street is the worst because the street, that's where society will only condone so much.
Yes.
And we've also placed upon this idea that police officers are heroes. It's the fucking Superman, call 911, right? 911 Superman. I'm going to tell you something, Mick. Cops show up after a fucking crime.
Yes.
They didn't prevent it.
Yeah.
You know who's supposed to prevent the crime? Corrections.
Yeah.
Corrections prevents a crime. Because they're the ones, when somebody goes into the system, they're the ones who dictate if that person should be out in society or not. And if it was up to them, fucking nobody would leave.
Right.
So if that's where we're at, I mean, to make sense of what the system is supposed to do is very, very strange. You know, it's a very, very precarious place, I think, and very peculiar even of like what could be the suggestions that we ask this criminal justice system to provide in order for better behavioralism.
Well, and there's people out there that probably think therapeutic measures is ridiculous, because there are people with that mentality that are like, you know what, you deserve to be where you are.
Yeah.
Because they would never do such a crime, or they never took that first sip of beer and became an alcoholic. You know what I mean? So there are people that would just think therapeutic justice or that sort of system is too nice. Well,
and then the next, like I said, my next thought is this. Okay, so what was the last crime you broke? What was the last crime you committed? And if they were to say speeding, okay, so thank God speeding is not an indictable offense. And when it does become one, what are you going to do then? Or your crime was speeding? Well, how unfortunate it would be if a kid were to run in front of your vehicle and you smashed it.
Yeah.
That's vehicular manslaughter right there. That's a that's a minimum 8-year sentence.
But people think that will never happen to them.
It's like, if you ever watched that movie Shot Caller. So in that movie, get it on Netflix whenever you can. In that movie, spoiler alert, the somebody dies in the vehicle, and the wife says to her husband, she says, people don't go to jail for mistakes. Every fucking day they do.
Yeah, they do.
Because guess what? It's all a big fucking mistake.
Yeah.
It's all a big mistake. And your mistake could be as innocent as speeding, or it could be as dramatic as speeding and smoking somebody that you just didn't see.
Yeah.
Okay? It's the same detriment. And the preconceived notion that it was thought out is inconsequential in my opinion. Sure, somebody who's premeditating a murder is a little different, or somebody premeditating a rape is a little different, or premeditating, most drug dealers didn't premeditate going into the drug dealing world.
No.
They're there because they're using drugs.
Yeah.
That's the only way to be able to accommodate the amount of drugs that they're using. It's the only way to accommodate that access that they need in order to survive on a daily contingency. So that's an economic crime. That's not a crime of premeditation that we're going to fucking ruin the world.
No, they weren't 10 years old like, ooh, I can't wait to sell heroin.
Yeah, want to be just like Lucas on fucking American Gangster. Like that's, and maybe there is people like that too, right?
But I'm sure they're surrounded by a unfortunate upbringing of people who are already in that lifestyle.
I mean, if you look at The Sopranos, I think this almost, I think, encapsulates our generation. AJ tries to go and kill, which is Tony's son, tries to go and kill Corrado, his uncle, because his uncle tried to whack him out.
Yeah.
Okay. And Tony goes and basically bails him out of fucking jail because he's got connections with the cops. And he throws AJ up against the fucking vehicle and he's like, what did you do? You did absolutely nothing. You know what would happen if we didn't have connections? You'd do 25 fucking years. 25 for fucking attempted murder. Attempted. You didn't even do anything. And then AJ started talking about The Godfather. And how The Godfather, Michael, the young one, avenged his father's shooting. Okay? And felt that it was necessary for him to do the same thing. And Tony Tony looks at him and says, that's a fucking movie.
Yeah.
That so encapsulates us, where I think in our generation what's really happened is people are now personifying themselves as these characters. Like how many times have you heard somebody say, yeah, I'm like them? No, you're fucking not.
Yeah.
That's a fucking figment.
It's a fictional
like
character.
It was made up.
Yeah.
That's not you. You're a real fucking person, aren't you? So what, you're going to go act like that person? Mm-hmm. Who the fuck are you? Like, it's ridiculous. And we see this all. I mean, you see that shit all. And I think that is a perpetuation of jail as well. We see that in jail all the time, man. People acting in a like in a persona as opposed to them just being them.
Yeah, well, because they don't have their identity, or they just identify with that, like a character. Or
and through restorative justice means, so I did like a big book study, right? I went through the steps. I've talked about this openly, and I consider that a way of restorative justice because it's with a community of addicts.
Yeah.
Okay, do you have any idea how much I've learned about myself over the amount of 5 years and a bit in order to be comfortable enough with myself not to have some sort of personification in order to be playing a role in life?
Yeah.
It's taken a long time. And I think this has been abundantly clear since about the 30s to now that it's an identity crisis that our society's running through. And this is why restorative justice is so necessary in order to show people how to heal those undesirable behaviors.
Especially the youth, right?
Oh, it's crazy. 99%.
I feel like it should be being tackled at that age so it doesn't hit them in adulthood.
And like I had said before about how summary convictions, people who have 2 years less, which is in Canada the lesser end, there is no reintegration into community. No reintegration into community whatsoever. Instead, we say become an indictable offender, and how does that say? How do we say that? Well, we have a mix, right? When you go to jail, there's a mix between federal offenders and provincial offenders. What do you think the federal offenders are telling the provincial offenders? This is what it looks like getting out of jail in the federal system. That's what they're telling them. So then it becomes incentivized.
Yeah.
Right? And then once that ends up happening, the person's looking at, well, how the fuck do I get out into the federal system now? How do I go to the big pond?
Yeah.
We need an off-ramp.
For sure.
And nobody's building it, So, I don't know. I think my biggest suggestion is to start utilizing more of that Portugal model.
Yes.
And to start utilizing a lot of the engagements that we already have in a broader scope. More drug court. More access repeatedly to drug court as opposed to a one shot.
Yeah, one shot.
That's making no sense.
No.
Anyway, that's my piece. Want to wrap it up?
Sure. If you want to find the after show blogs, you can find that at www.lifeonlifestermspodcast.com. Our Facebook page is Life on Life's Terms Podcast. And
you can catch all the clips there.
Yes, or Instagram. If you want to check out mine, it is Chelsey_Life on Life's Terms.
Or Life on Life's Terms Podcast. Then you got your Twitter account. What's that all about?
Chelsey Kapler.
Oh, yeah. Mine's Life on Life's Terms. Where else? Yeah, I was thinking about getting a Snapchat page. Fuck it.
No.
Fuck it.
Not feeling it.
Yeah. Let's move. We're moving on from that.
Yeah. No Snapchat.
All right. You guys have a wonderful Friday. We'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you next week.
Peace.